Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. As you know, my dear respected brothers and sisters, that we have been discussing, or we discussed al-ahkam al-shar'iyya and al-ahkam al-wada'iyya. The ahkam, the rulings, whether the shar'i rulings or the wada'iyya rulings. We said that Usul al-Fiqh, if you remember, we said that Usul al-Fiqh are the set of tools that enable us to understand the sources of Sharia in a way that we will be able to conclude the rulings. So we said that there are the sources of Sharia. We need to understand them in order to come up with the rulings. And as the rulings is the final outcome of Usul al-Fiqh, we started with the discussion of the rulings in order to understand what we want to achieve from Usul al-Fiqh, in order to see the outcome, to see the target, to see the end goal. And that helps us to understand what we are talking about. So we spoke about rulings briefly, and we said that the Shar'i rulings, or al-ahkam al-shar'iyya, are of 5 categories. Wujub, on the other side tahrim, then recommendation, on the other side dislikeness, and ibaha. These are the categories of ahkam shar'iyya that we will achieve once we study usul al-fiqh. Of course, the details of the rulings, مثلا as-salah, is it wajiba or not? Drinking alcohol, is it haram or not? مثلا visiting graveyards for women, is it haram or not? These are the details. These details are studied in fiqh, not in usul al-fiqh, but the categories are studied in usul al-fiqh. So we studied the categories. Now these categories, which is the end product, are derived from where and how are they derived? Okay, 2 things, if you remember. Where do we derive them from? Okay, and how we derive them. Where we derive them from is the sources of Sharia. How we derive them is what? Is the tools of understanding the sources in order to come up with those ahkam. Okay, so we have the sources, we have tools to be applied on those sources, and in order to come up with the ahkam. After studying the ahkam, as we have done in the previous episode or in the previous episodes, we need now to start with the first circle, which is the sources of Sharia, or the sources of Al-Islam. What are the sources of Al-Islam? Obviously, any Muslim knows that the sources of Al-Islam are Quran and Sunnah. These are the 2 main sources of Al-Islam, Quran and Sunnah. Now, there are some other sources. The other sources, you can say they are taken from Quran and Sunnah. Okay? Why were they taken from Quran and Sunnah? Because Allah, the legislator, Allah Jalla wa Ala, He communicated to us through Quran and Sunnah. And therefore, there is no other source other than Quran and Sunnah, because this is the revelation. This is what Allah Jalla wa Ala communicated with us. However, this Quran and Sunnah, which is the revelation, the communication from Allah, the communication from Allah to human beings, to humanity, have introduced, Quran and Sunnah introduced some other principles that are very, very important principles. And those principles, because they are very profound principles, important principles, themselves became as stand-alone adilla, or stand-alone sources of Sharia, such as ijma', the consensus of scholars. The consensus of scholars is the 3rd primary source of Sharia. The consensus of scholars is the 3rd primary source of Sharia. It relies heavily on Quran and Sunnah, or it was introduced to us by Quran and Sunnah, okay, but it became as if it is an independent source of Sharia. Also, qiyas, extending a ruling to cover a new case by analogy, okay, extension by analogy, qiyas, yeah. It is taken from Quran and Sunnah, but because it is so important and so flexible, and the application of it is so wide, or the applications of it are so wide, it became a source by itself. And hence, normally the scholars of Islam confirm that there are 4 primary sources of Al-Islam: Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' and Qiyas. Okay? Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', consensus, and Qiyas, which is the extension by analogy. Now, the scholars of Usul al-Fiqh conclude that these are the primary 4 sources of Sharia, and they say that there are some secondary sources of Sharia as well. Secondary sources. Those secondary sources that we will mention are taken from Quran and Sunnah, but they are not as decisive as those 4 sources of Sharia. Moreover, they are not that widely accepted by all scholars, so they consider them as secondary sources, or they consider them as sources that are that not all scholars accept or not all scholars agree on. What are those sources? They say, for example, maslaha mursala, yeah, unconditional, unrestricted benefit. They also mention qawl al-sahabi, the statement of the sahabi. They also mention istihsan. They also mention shar'u man qabla, shar'u man qabla, the legislation of previous nations, and so on. So they say that those are sources of Sharia. However, they are secondary, and also not all scholars accept them. We will come to that, but I want to highlight that there are 2 types of sources of Sharia, the 4 primary sources which all scholars accepted, and the other secondary sources that not all scholars accepted. Now we need to come and discuss the 4 sources of Sharia one by one: Quran, then Sunnah, then Ijma', then Qiyas. Now, before discussing this, we need to understand something. In Usul al-Fiqh, you always find the word dalil. Dalil. Yeah? We are talking here in English about sources. Sources means masadir, yeah, in Arabic. However, dalil is not just a masdar. It is stronger than a masdar. It is a masdar that has a legal implication, a legal, from a Shari perspective, implication or consequence. So it is a masdar, and that leads to something, that obliges you to do something or to believe in something, a dalil. Now, this word dalil, yeah, dalil, the scholars use it to refer to either the dalil aqli, which is Quran and the dalil naqli, which is Quran and Sunnah, textual revealed dalil, yeah, which is dalil naqli, Quran or Sunnah, and some scholars include ijma' in it as a dalil naqli, and they also say that there is a dalil aqli, an intellectual dalil. An intellectual dalil. What is the dalil aqli? The dalil aqli is qiyas. Okay? So they say adillat al-sharia, the adilla of sharia are 2 types. The primary adilla, Quran, Sunnah, Qiyas, Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' and Qiyas, and the secondary one, which we have just mentioned, qawl al-sahabi, the statement of the sahabi, istislah, the maslaha, and so on. So as if sources of Sharia is equal to adilla of Sharia. Okay? but there is a difference, as I have told you. Okay, there is a difference between sources, the word sources of Sharia, and the adilla of Sharia. Normally, the scholars of Usul al-Fiqh use the word adilla. Okay, adilla, because it has a consequence. Okay, it leads to something. This is the dalil. Now, and remember, the dalil does not mean a textual dalil. It includes the textual dalil and the non-textual dalil. The non-textual dalil is qiyas. Okay. When we discuss the adilla, yeah, let us remember a statement that is frequently used by the scholars of Usul al-Fiqh, which is adillatul ahkam. Yeah, adillatul ahkam. Sometimes the scholars of Usul al-Fiqh define Usul al-Fiqh as adillatul ahkam. Yeah, the adilla of the ahkam. What do they mean? They don't mean to restrict Usul al-Fiqh on the adilla only. But they say that the dalil will never become a dalil just by referring to the text. No, it becomes a dalil when we refer to the text as well as the meaning of the text. Okay? So they say that if we define Usul al-Fiqh as the adilla of the ahkam, we are including what? We are including the sources, the adilla, the textual adilla and the non-textual adilla, and we are also including the set of tools that enable us to understand those adilla, and also we are including the categories of rulings that we have mentioned earlier. So the word adillatul ahkam refers to the three circles that we have highlighted in the beginning: the sources of Sharia, the tools to understand those sources, and the ahkam, the categories of ahkam that Usul al-Fiqh aims to conclude or to come up with. Okay? Now this is an introduction to the adilla, to either the sources of Sharia or to the adilla of Sharia or the adilla of ahkam. Okay. Now let us discuss each one. And of course, we need to start discussing Al-Quran, which is the first dalil of Sharia, the first dalil of Al-Islam, the first source of Al-Islam, Al-Quran. Obviously, when we discuss Al-Quran, we are discussing it from this perspective. We are not discussing the tafsir of Al-Quran. We are not discussing the virtues of reciting Al-Quran. We are not discussing the status of Al-Quran from a spiritual perspective, although those points are quite important, but, or rather, we are discussing Al-Quran as the first primary source of Al-Sharia. Okay? Now, Al-Quran Al-Kareem, if the first point that we need to discuss is the definition of Al-Quran. The definition of Al-Quran. Maybe we can do this inshallah in the next episode. Let us stop here, and inshallah in the next episode we will start discussing Al-Quran as the first primary source of Al-Sharia or Al-Islam. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.